you a little bit about vitamin D and just give a bit of an explainer about it. So I am in, this is a website called timeanddate.com. It's a really useful website if you're into this sort of thing. If you're not, then just watch the video and you won't have to again. So I'm in Gloucester in the UK. So at the moment, here we go. So it's just going up to 10:28 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Clocks are about to change. That becomes relevant and I'll explain why. So when we look at this, we can see and quite a lot of information just straight off the bat here as such. So what we've got on here is we're telling you when the sunrise is, when the sunset is, and the day length, and it's 4 minutes longer, all right, okay, today than it was yesterday. Now this is quite interesting, so I'll explain why. So let's have a look. So if we move into this, which is astronomy, which is one of the disciplines of physics, what we're looking at here, if we look at sunrise and sunset, currently at the moment, the sun altitude is 35.9 degrees above the horizon. Okay, and that's increasing. That will increase until we reach something called solar noon, which I'll show you. Now, this is a sine wave here. Where this jumps is because when the clocks change. That's why there's sort of a bit of a sort of slant as such. So we look at today here. What we've got, if we look at the headings here, solar noon is what we're interested in. All right. So if we look at it for today, solar noon occurs at 12:14. And this is Greenwich Mean Time, and the altitude will be 40.7 degrees above the horizon. Now, what's interesting about that, and it's saying 180 because that's basically directly, the sun will be directly overhead as such, which is solar noon. So it doesn't occur exactly at midday, and it does change for various reasons, just to do with the way that the planet revolves around the sun and the Earth's tilt and a few other factors as well. So that's what we're talking about. It says refraction also. And we're using a Gregorian calendar, which is quite arbitrary as such, really. But what you find that's interesting with this is the date. You see the difference in here, the times here. So how much longer the days are getting. Right? Now this is a sine wave, but so they're starting to. So after this, they'll start to decrease the amount of day length. And so if you were to look at, let's say, for example, around the solstice periods, let's have a look. We'll go back to December. If you look here, if you notice on here, do you see the difference in date, in length of day, is actually only a few seconds? Yeah, it was getting shorter, shorter, shorter. Then you hit the winter solstice, which doesn't always fall on the 21st, and then from there, then it starts to get longer. As per summer. So if we go back to where we are today, we're on March 2020. If we look at this, going back to this thing here, which is what's interesting. This is what you need to really want to be thinking about with respect to vitamin D. Vitamin D has been shown to reduce your risk of contracting respiratory infections. All right. Not by a huge amount, looks like about 12%. Don't quote me on that. There are papers that you can go and look at. But why this is interesting, if your local laws allow you to go out and about, a good time to do it, if you don't know your vitamin D levels, is going to be around solar noon. Okay? Now, there are obviously other precautions, there's a medical disclaimer here, and this is not medical advice at all, this is purely information. It's easily accessible information. But what's interesting about this is the sun angle at the moment, when we look at it, is when it approaches solar noon, at an altitude of 41 degrees, you are going to be able to absorb vitamin D. But if you go out for an early morning walk, look at the sun altitude there, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees, or just for a sunset walk, the altitude there, a lot of the UVB light is going to get refracted back into the atmosphere. Right? It's a bit like a prism, the sort of things you play with at school. So the problem is actually going out at sort of early morning and early evening, you don't get the vitamin D. You need to go out around solar noon. And that's the thing that people don't often understand. So around solar noon is time, if you're allowed to do it. Obviously, your best possible chance of avoiding this virus is always going to be total isolation. That's the only way. But if you do have to go out, and if it can be good for your mental health, the time to be doing it for vitamin D is going to be around solar noon. It's as straightforward as that. Anyway, hopefully this is useful. Have a look at it, have a play around with it. It's a great website. It really is, and you can see even in the time that we've been doing this video that this has increased slightly as well. So this is where it starts to get interesting. So when people say, "Oh, it's sunny, it means I'm going to get vitamin D," no, not necessarily. You need to look at the sun altitude, and even now we're really only starting to be pushing the point. Sort of 40 degrees is really about the sort of minimum where you're really going to get anything substantial. Other factors do come into play, such as your ethnicity, for example, plays a big role in this. But this is why so many people in the UK, where I'm based, are deficient or low in vitamin D, which is why in 2016 Public Health England put their recommendations out. I think it was a 326-page paper saying that everybody should supplement. I think it was 400 international units per day, but it's going to vary because it depends what type of lifestyle you lead, whether you're inside all the time or whether you work outside all the time, and your ethnicity, skin colour, or many other factors that go in the mix as well. And that's where testing is important. So I've actually did a finger prick blood test myself this morning to test my serum levels of vitamin D3. And I'll be going to put that in the post today using sterile technique, because I assume that anything outside of my property is contaminated. As simple as that. If you don't understand sterile technique, then that's something that you can ask about. But anyway, as I said, I think it's interesting this with respect to vitamin D. But don't by no means think that vitamin D is a panacea. It is not.